Black Rifle Coffee, baby. Pretty cool.
Justin Lee, I've been waiting for this one for a long time. Hawaii native, world-class spear fisherman, guide, hunter,
just a big
all
boy.
around. You're also an essential oil salesman now, kind of?
We grow the stuff. I don't sell the stuff. I just grow it and help produce it.
Grower. We've been trying to do a podcast for a long time now.
Yeah, it's been a minute, and the opportunity came, and taking my dad and some friends hunting up in the Uintas, and got a call, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be in town. You want to do this? He's like, I got a birthday party first, but yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. You already got in the woods. I'm already a little bit jealous. I'm still a couple weeks out before our elk hunt dates, but you already got a couple things on the ground. And
it was really cool. So my best friend Wayne, since I've been friends, we call it Hanabata days, when you got boogers running down your nose and running all over. I mean, we hunted everything under the sun in Hawaii, from sparrows to axis deer. And it's always been a dream to come to the mainland and chase animals. And elk has always been at the top of the list, just because they're big and cool. They're loud. And his hunt didn't last very long. I mean, 2 hours into it, a friend of mine said, he's all like, when Wayne shows up, the animals and Chuck Norris get out of town. It was just a cool experience, to be right next to my buddy that, been friends for 3 decades, and get to be a part of that, and see him, the rejoice and the emotional roller coaster and the excitement, and then him FaceTiming his son, and his son being just proud of his dad was so cool. It was super, super cool.
Yeah, get into your family history a little bit and what your childhood was like.
So we kind of bounced around a little bit. My dad got his master's degree in wildlife biology from Colorado State in Fort Collins. So when we were 5, and I'm the middle of 3 boys. So when I was 5, my older brother was 7, I think, and my younger brother was 3. My mom and dad moved us to Fort Collins, Colorado. And when we were in Fort Collins, my dad finished his master's degree, and my mom went to nursing school in northern Colorado, Greeley. And but my dad's master's thesis was on the hook and release lake trout mortality rate. And so we spent a lot of time fishing on a lake in Granby Reservoir. And so we were feral. Like, me and my brothers were definitely ran around barefoot, chasing stuff, running in the mud. I remember setting up ramps at the end of the dock and just launching into the river or the lake with our bikes. And that kind of, and then my dad has always been an archery hunter. His dad was an archery hunter. His grandfather, my great-grandfather, was an archery hunter. And he started what was called Diamond Head Archery on Oahu. And I think it was Bowhunter magazine back in like the 50s or 60s did an article about him called Mr. Archery. And so they followed him. He taught, blind kids how to shoot bow and arrow. He had a couple of 100 members to his archery club, and that kind of just trickled down. And so, I picked up my first bow when I was 8, recurve bow, and then kind of slowly graduated to getting to a compound and then hunting, and so always been outside, whether it was chasing animals in the wood with a bow in tow or following my dad into the water with a spear gun in hand. And, just that lifestyle of get outside, chase animals, get food, come back home, pound your chest, clean fish, and eat dinner. And I say this all the time, like, it makes me so proud that my son and daughter know that fish have gills and scales, and you got to gut them before you eat them, and bacon comes from pigs, and so, and that's just basically the same childhood I had growing up. Like, as selfish as I want to be, I want my kids to kind of have the same upbringing that I did, because I enjoyed it so much. And I hope they have a friend like my buddy Wayne that was a partner in everything that we did, basically from spearfishing to archery hunting to everything in between. And so, like, to have it full circle, to kind of get back to like that elk hunt with Wayne, just the 30 years of being friends, hunting animals, to kind of get to the pinnacle of shooting an elk at 24 yards was unbelievable.
Yeah, because you were telling me that he had never left the island.
He's left the island. He's He's gone to Las Vegas. And we actually hunted whitetails together in Kansas a couple of years, but he will not jump on a plane by himself.
Oh yeah, it was the original trip to Kansas.
Yeah, like I told him, I was like, hey, I'm gonna be finished in Colorado, and we drew Kansas whitetail. I was all like, I got your plane ticket. Just get on the plane and meet me up here. I was like, you want your layover in Denver or San Francisco? And he's all like, I gotta fly by myself? No, bro, I'm not doing that. So I flew back home, was home for like 24 hours to get him so we could go hunt together. But
it's a true friend right there.
But it was, I mean, we've done everything together. And so to notch another bucket list kind of thing, like an elk hunt was really cool.
So you were in Colorado with your dad as he was finishing up his master's on trout, which is interesting for a Hawaiian to do. But then when did you guys end up back on the Big Island?
Right the summer between my 5th and 6th grade year.
Okay.
So we were there just for a few years. And then my parents, just being, my mom is from the Philippines, but she moved over when she was 9 to a little island called Moloka. And then my dad grew up on the Big Island. And then when he went to school in Oahu, they met. And so with my mom is one of 8 kids. My dad is the middle of 3 boys. And all of the family was back on the islands. And so when they were finished with school, they were like, let's go back
Your
home.
mom is one of 8?
One of 8.
Goodness gracious. So where was her childhood at?
So her story is pretty crazy. So she lived in the Philippines in a province called La Union, I believe it's called. And when she was about 8 years old, she's the third of 8. Her father was actually assassinated in the Philippines. Like political stance, I don't know what year
like
he got shot in the
been?
head. Like, my mom was born in 58 and she was 8, so 65, 66.
Okay, so this was like...
Yeah, so what it was is like...
Vietnam era.
Her dad, but it was more of like her dad's cousin was the mayor of this area, or the governor, I don't know, some political office for this area, and it was re-election year. And he worked really closely with his cousin, and the opposing people were like, I bet if we took him out, we would win. And that's exactly what happened. And, I don't know too much of that side of the story, but that's what ultimately made my mom and her 7 brothers and sisters and her mom to move to Moloka, where my grandma was living, and they worked in the pineapple fields and did all of that. It's crazy. Like, she went from, my mom's like, we lived a good life. We had a flush toilet in the Philippines. And so they went from that to...
Family members were assassinated, but we had flush toys.
Let me tell you, we had great toys and we always had food. But so they moved to Moloka, and, my mom's escape was reading. And so she loved to read and everything like that. And so when she went away to college over on Oahu, she walked on the beach and met my dad as a lifeguard. And, sparks flew, and now we're here.
And that was on Moloka?
So she lived on Moloka. She moved to Oahu to go to school. And so Moloka, you can get voted off that island pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a really interesting... I was looking at property on there for a while. I can't remember if I... hit you up about that, but that was I was like, I'm gonna buy some property in Hawaii, and started doing a little bit of research in there. And one, there's not a lot of people on that island, right? And it's very close-knit community.
Yeah. So the people in Moloka are some of the friendliest people in the world. They really are. They will gladly give the shirt off your back. They will point you in the direction of the access steer. But as long as you go to Moloka and you don't try and better Moloka. I think a lot of people go there and be like, you guys need more jobs. We should build a hotel.
Yeah.
Don't try and change Moloka.
Yeah. Come
and be a part of Moloka. Enjoy it. I've got friends that have had amazing experiences on Moloka. We've shot axis deer, had some really good barbecues, met some really good people. And then I've heard of people going out there and just being like, I'm never going back to that island again. And I think the people of Moloka either decide that you're going to be a part of the community or you're going to be voted off. But if you go to Moloka with the full respect that, hey, I'm a visitor, I'm just going to have some fun, but you stay within your lane and you don't go crazy, you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're accepted. It's a great place, good food, great people, super, super friendly people. But yeah, you step off the wrong path, you try and claim something that's not yours, you get set in your position pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great that places like that still exist in the world today.
Yeah.
In the midst of all our progress, industrialization, and technology, that there's this place that's locked into its culture, and it's like very unforgiving and towards an evolution of that, towards adapting to the modern times. And I watched an episode as I was looking at land out there, and that plot that I was looking at actually got bought up. Not like a month after I think I sent that to you. And I would have wanted to go look at that because it was right on the water, and it looked like a lot of wash came down with the rains, and then it might be one of those things that
It's covered in axis deer, though.
Yeah, totally. So much of it is covered in axis deer. Right? But Anthony Bourdain did an episode on Moloka, and it was really cool to see that from the foodie perspective and the way that they develop and like how they incorporate, the natural flow of wildlife into their diet. It's super interesting on like how they do it specifically on that island.
Yeah. That Anthony Bourdain episode is like one of my favorites because he's riding around with that guy Nelson Rapunat, and that's what Nelson says. He's all like, "Bro, we friendly. You can come over here. Yeah. You can come eat our food. We can make barbecue. We can break bread. We're gonna have fun, but no try change us.
Yeah,
this is who we are. We don't need extra jobs. We don't need. If we wanted that lifestyle, we would move.
Yeah,
and so and that guy Nelson, like he is who he is. He's not gonna change his Pigeon accent for anybody. He's not gonna not eat the guts of the goat. He's gonna be who he is.
Yeah. What is the Pigeon accent?
So a lot of times, if you go back in Hawaiian history, all of a sudden you got the sugarcane era basically. And so you had all of these different walks of life coming and working together. So you had the Japanese, the Filipinos, the Portuguese, the Hawaiians, you had this huge chunk of just people, and the common language had to be English. And so you've got, 7 or 8 different languages trying to speak English, and they all got their own accents, and they all put their own spin in it. So, like, you can say something like, "Oh, bro, we go down the beach, we go kanikapila, we go throw some kalbi on the hibachi. We just chill. We go have some beers, we go kick some back, bro. You can come down with the family, you can come down with the ohana." Basically what I said is, like, we're going to go to the beach, we're going to play some music, we're going to throw some stuff on the grill, and we're just going to hang out. But it's like just the pigeon that just is there. But we used to get in trouble when we were younger speaking pigeon in the house. And then when we moved to Colorado when I was 5 years old, nobody understood what the heck I was. People would think that I was Mexican, and they would be like, "Hola," and I'd be like, "Sup?" And I'd be like, "You're forgetting the A in your hola is aloha." But so yeah, just growing up, like you realized, kind of where you were at is you kind of had to change your Pigeon accent. And then mom and dad made sure that we didn't speak Pigeon in the household growing up. Yeah. But when the uncles and the aunties used to come for barbecues in the afternoon and mom and dad had a couple of brewskis, we were allowed to speak Pigeon, and we could hear them speak Pigeon. And the stories definitely got bigger and wider, and it was a lot of fun.
So your mom came from the Philippines, and then was your dad born on the islands?
Yep. My dad is a Hilo boy. He grew up, so he's multi-generational of Hawaii. He's got Hawaiian blood. Like his makeup is Hawaiian, Chinese, Caucasian. And so like his great-grandfather was half Chinese, half Hawaiian, who is the guy that started the archery club. And then, so his lineage goes back to, the Hawaiian era. And, but he was born in the town called Hilo on the Big Island. His dad and my mom, or his dad and his mom, met at Lewis Clark up in Oregon. She moved back home with him, and they had an anthurium farm in Hilo. And then
anthurium farm?
Yeah, so those flowers that have like that heart shape with like basically the penis that comes out the center of it.
Yeah.
They had one of those.
Flower.
Yeah. Great flower. But so they had an anthurium farm in Hilo. And so that's what my dad grew up on.
Okay.
And then my dad's dad passed away when he was 15 from diabetes. And his grandfather basically kind of took over that father figure. And he was the big archery hunter and the spearfisherman and throw net and just kind of local boy. He grew up as a beach boy on Waikiki. And so he had, a lot of time hanging out at the beach and everything like that. So, yeah, my great-grandfather, he was a badass mother trucker.
Yeah.
And just legendary old man that it was pretty cool. And so my dad grew up hunting and fishing with him and diving with him, and growing up I didn't want anything more than to be in my dad's shadow at all times.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of led me into the outdoors.
How far back can you trace your lineage?
Pretty far back. So like my great grandmother is Victoria Keali'i o Kamamalu, and the Kamamalu Ohana, the Kamamalu family, were a li'i of some sort. So I mean, every Hawaiian out there I think has some claim that they're of royalty.
So explain that to me. Ali'i?
Ali'i. So ali'i is basically the chiefs.
Okay.
And so you had your kings, and then you had the chiefs that were underneath it.
Yep.
And the different families. And so there was what was called the like ahupua'a system. And so like every island had like basically a pie shape. And on that pie shape you could live sustainably.
From like coming down from the
mountain
top
to the
point.
ocean.
Yep.
And so they would
And each of those pie slices had a chief, and then there was
had a li'i on there.
A king for the island?
For the island,
okay.
Exactly. So like...
so would the king have one of the slices too? Or how did that work?
He just kind of oversaw everything.
Yeah.
So it was his island, or different districts
just
and stuff
went wherever
like that.
he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
every island was like that?
So every island was like that to a certain point. There's a show called The Chief of War.
Yeah, I started watching a couple episodes. It's super good.
It's pretty crazy.
I have so many questions.
So you had your chief basically of Maui, and you had your chief of Oahu, and you had your chief of this. And that's where like our great king, which is Kamehameha the First, like he is the first king that united all the Hawaiian Islands. Not to ruin Chief of War, but so that Kamehameha he fought and defeated all the other kings and united us under one rule. And so that was the first time in Hawaiian history. It was always the king of Oahu, the king of Maui, the king of Kauai, the king of Big Island or Hawaii. And, so that was the first time that kind of came into rule. And if you guys haven't checked out Chief of War, like it's
really good.
I love it.
It's violent as all get out, which is the way it should be, because you're like, oh, it's probably actually this way.
Oh, for sure. Did you see like the weapons they had?
Yeah.
Like basically, brass knuckles with shark teeth on them.
Yeah. And then the
club that he has.
His club that he breaks.
With human teeth.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Because I was gonna ask you about that. Like, what is that weapon? Because it looks like a different kind of, or a specific type of wood too.
It's probably coal, and so coal is such a heavy wood in Hawaii that if you threw it in the water, it actually sinks. It's such a dense wood.
Oh, really?
And it's pretty endangered now. Like if you find coal or kauila, which is two really strong woods, like you can't even touch them.
Oh,
like,
really?
They fence them off. They kind of protect them in that way. And so that's kind of what their war tools were made out of, is that really, really hard wood. Nowadays they make them out of koa because koa is so pretty. And so maybe they made them out of them back then, but like a lot of the tools that I hear was made with those two really dense woods. And then the human teeth on there just to add a little bit. And then the necklaces that they wear with that big scoop, that spoon? That necklace, historically, the braid part is human hair.
Yeah.
Of the people that they have conquered. Because the Hawaiians believe that all your mana and everything, because it's the closest to God, was in your hair. Mm. So when they captured and killed people, like they took their hair and added braids to that. And like Kamehameha, like there's a museum on Oahu called the Bishop Museum. And they have, I don't know if it's his or a replica of his, but it's like in this safe. And it's like 3 inches in diameter thick.
Oh, really? So like your enemies, like the hair of your enemies, you just keep adding.
You just keep adding to the necklace.
That just smells so bad.
But the mana. What are you talking about? It probably smell like herbal essence.
Just rub all the essential oils on it. It'd be fine.
Exactly. But the crazy thing, talk about the essential oils. So like, yeah, my family does a reforestation of the native Hawaiian forest, and so we started doing the project back in 2010. And the financial train for us is sandalwood oil. So we make an essential oil called Royal Hawaiian Sandalwood Oil on there. And we make it with the dead and dying sandalwood trees. So a tree that is kind of past its prime, in the latter part of its life cycle. We harvest that tree, and then or completely dead trees. But the roots that are in the ground of that dying tree are still connected to their host because they're a semi-parasitic tree, so they can't grow by themselves. And so the root systems are connected to different trees underground. When you take out that perpetual bud and you take out the root ball, now all of those roots need their own tree, and so they'll sprout their own tree. And so, like, from harvesting one dying sandalwood tree, we've had anywhere between 5 to 30 new trees kind of sprout up. And so then we support them by planting more native trees that are supposed to be there that they can grow with. And so, the forest, what it looked like before we started.
So it's almost like the forest grows itself in a way.
It's just like, it's kind of like everywhere else in the world. Like if you just sit back and listen and watch the forest, it's going to work its way back. So in the 1850s, so there was a thing called the Great Mahele. And the Great Mahele was like when the Hawaiian kingdom was like, you know what, every man, woman, and child in Hawaii is going to get some land. And so they put out this thing. People went and claimed their, I think it was like half acre or 1 acre of land. Well, a lot of the lands that went unclaimed, they did a big auction. And so they started selling off some of the land for the first time ever. And so the swath of land that we are on is in the Kaumo'o Ahupua'a. And a cattle ranching family purchased it. And so the first thing that they did to make it more advantageous for raising cattle was cut the forest down and plant grass. And the grass that they planted was this kikuyu grass from Africa. And it stayed like that for 150 years, until we started getting up there. And basically because where we're at on the Big Island is, the weather is so thermal driven because you have this huge, basically 14,000 foot mountains on the east side of us, which is Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. And then you have Ho'olalai, which is another big mountain. And you basically make this horseshoe around it. So the temperatures in the morning are cold, so it blows down cold, dry air. And then as soon as the land starts to heat up and that water starts to evaporate and move uphill, it turns into fog and moves uphill. So like our property doesn't get too much rain, but it gets a lot of precipitation that blows over it. And so when the cattlemen cut down the trees, they basically lost their water catchers. They lost their ability to, keep the grass green. And so they tried to pump up water and for the cattle and this and that, and they kind of just dug themselves in a hole. And so when we purchased the property, it was kind of right on the tail end of that cattle industry up there. And so the land was lacking of water catchers, and it kind of was lacking of, color. It was so unsaturated of like life. And so we started planting trees, started to do our reforestation efforts. And now we've got, I want to say, between like the new a'ali'i bushes and the pukeave that's up there, of course the iliahi, which is the native Hawaiian sandalwood, koa, mamane, there's like 14, 15 different types of native Hawaiian trees and plants that came back. We've estimated it like we've gotten close to 1 million new native Hawaiian trees on the 3,000 acres that we have, from the shrubs all the way up to the big trees. But what that's done more than anything is caught that fog bank and help water the forest. And it's crazy the amount of regrowth that we've had and the amount of life that we've had back into the land. And, so by harvesting those dead and dying sandalwood trees and making that essential oil, it's really allowed us to have the financials to be able to protect the forest. So we'll put up fences to keep the sheep, the pigs, not the pigs are there, they can't do anything about that. But the sheep, the cows, and the horses off the property, which really predate on the young native Hawaiian trees, to give them time for them to establish themselves. And it's pretty rad what we've done in the last 15 years.
It seems super cool that in conjunction with some of the other things that I've seen and heard about Hawaii on some of the other islands. Like when we were in Maui, like we were able to hunt that other area that Dawn and Rodney with Maui Hunting Safaris had previously not been able to hunt because it was privately owned. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, the state started buying up lands and then released that out to people again, so that there's actually more access happening than there has been in previous years.
Yeah, it seems like that. So even like in addition to the state, like there's Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estate that purchases a lot of land as well, and they're one of like the largest landowners in Hawaii, and they turn around and they lease a lot of it back to whether it's for hunting operations, we lease land from them for doing our reforestation efforts, or cattlemen, They even have hotels on their land, so they kind of have a lot of the land, but they give it back to the working class. It's pretty cool what they've been able to do out there.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening or watching the Black Rifle Coffee podcast. Please allow me to take a second to pay the bills and let you know what we've got going on here at Black Rifle, or I could say the best way that you can support us. I hope that you are in the coffee club currently. If you're not, you should be. Every month, we ship fresh roasted coffee directly to you, free of shipping, and you can get in the club, get in a one bagger or one boxer for as little as $15.99 a month. Also included in that subscription is a whole section of the website for partner discounts with over 100 brands within that. Discounts on everything from firearms to protein to outdoors products, you name it. We have partnered with some of the best in the outdoor firearms industries. And if you want something a little bit more, there's always a little bit more layered within the Coffee Club subscription. And I'm talking about the exclusive coffee subscription, otherwise known as the Evan coffee subscription, because it was something he specifically tailored towards himself, because he wanted to drink different coffees from different countries every single month. And then it gives us an excuse to come up with a whole bunch of different branding ideas and concepts. Last month we did the Army 250th coffee. This month is not tea. And then the next month is just this wild design for the Secret Water Society. So go ahead, get in the club. It's the best way to support the brand. We appreciate everything that you do for us here at Black Rifle Coffee. Now back to the show. Okay, so to go back though, on the Chief of War side of things. So like what was the tree that they were making the weapons out of called again? That's
the Kawila and Ko.
Ko.
And not Koa, Ko.
Ko.
K-O.
K-O. Okay. Yeah. Has there been an effort to replant those at all? So
they're very, very slow growing.
Yeah.
But there's parts of it where there's a swath of land just north of Kona on the Big Island that there is a fairly healthy coal forest. Kawila is a little bit more of a challenge. I don't know the specifics on what makes it challenging for it to grow. But I have seen a handful of them down on the south side of the island, which is really cool to see. Like I was with some property owners down there checking out some land and stuff, and they're like, "You want to see a Kawila tree?" I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So he walked up. He's like, "You can't tell anybody where this is." Like, for sure. And it's crazy. You walk up and there's like, we call them keikis. So there's like kid trees. And there's like a thriving little patch of Kawila, and I was like, "This is super cool. This is really, really cool." And then like I don't know how far you are into Chief of War.
I'm like 3 episodes in, but we all know like. It seems like it's following history pretty close.
It's very good. So like the sandalwood trade, that was Hawaii's first export was sandalwood.
Yeah.
Before the whalers, before pineapples and sugarcane was sandalwood. It's pretty crazy. The trade of the sandalwood is so popular.
And this is the show. If you haven't watched the show, this takes place after Captain Cook.
Yes, after Captain Cook.
Which I can't. How many years? Do you remember? Roughly
I don't know how many years. I know Captain Cook. I'm trying to think of when he came. I should know this, but I don't know. But it's a significant amount of time because the Hawaiian Islands were on maps already.
Yeah.
But I know after Captain Cook left, like there was some time when people didn't go back.
You say left.
Left the planet. Left his physical form.
that was so interesting. So like, which I can't. It was 1700s, right? Like Captain Ryan, look up when Captain Cook came to Hawaii real quick. But so when he showed up, they thought he was a god, essentially, somewhere along those lines, right? Like this was the first interaction that Hawaiians had with anybody from the outside world.
Yeah, and it was when did he come?
January 18th, 1778.
1778.
Okay. He was 17 something.
This was like right during
revolutionary
time. Go figure.
Yeah.
there was a whole aura of revolution and rebellion going on during that time, evidently. But so he was there, and then pretty peaceful interactions.
The first time he was there. Very peaceful.
Very peaceful.
They were like, "Oh my God, this god came, showed up." It was all like, "Hey, he's on a seashell. He had all of the right things." It's amazing how many times, like around the world, like these explorers show up, like when they're supposed to show up. And it was peaceful. Then he left. But what he left behind was, disease and famine, and people started dying. And then they're like, oh, he's an imposter. And then he comes back, and they're like, oh, he's definitely not a god.
Yeah.
And
well, he came back in part because of bad weather.
Yeah.
Right? And he was like, he couldn't make it, so he had to return. And they're like, you're definitely not a god.
Exactly.
And then they murdered his ass.
Threw him off. There's a monument down on the south side of the island for him. It's crazy as I didn't know like how crazy of an explorer he was, like and how respected he was, in the quest that he did. I was up in with Jim Shockey, and hanging out with his Hand of War or Hand of Man museum, and he had like a whole section because James Cook was like his favorite explorer, and like he went all through the South Pacific, and he did things that was basically Chuck Norris status back in the day. And, it was pretty crazy to kind of go over there and see it and just kind of read some of the passages. In Hawaii, he's just the haole guy that came in and put us on the map. And, so there's a lot of mixed feelings about James Cook in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And, then if you dive into it and you look at like what he did, elsewhere in the world, I mean, just like all of other explorers, they did some horrible things and brought some horrible things with them. But I mean, to be like, I'm just going to go sail. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to figure this out. We're going to survive. We're going to push through, but Hawaii voted him off.
When is what's the current dialogue as far as, and I say current dialogue is like, it seems the older we get, the more we're looking back in history and discovering new things, and the dialogue and records that we were kind of growing up with and learning in school isn't necessarily the way it is as far as like how old humans are and the prominence of civilizations. But when did humans first come to Hawaii?
It's kind of, they don't know exactly. There's a rough estimate. They think the number of Hawaiians that were in Hawaii by the time Captain Cook got there was between like 500 and 750,000 people.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah. Because the origins of where the Hawaiians came from is still under debate a little bit. Some people say Micronesia, some people say, the French Polynesia down there, some people say, Indonesia, but there's a lot of, language that there's similarities. So like I went spearfishing down in Fiji, and there was a fish down there called the utu, which is UTU. That same fish in Hawaii is called uku.
Is that the one on your arm?
No, this is a kole on my arm.
Oh, okay.
And a yellow-eye kole on my arm. And then, that's how I cut my teeth growing up, is spearing those things. And even like maikai in Hawaii is good, and maitai in the South Pacific, in some parts of the South Pacific, is good. So the K and the U basically replaced each other in some of the languages. When that's how the name of the Mai Tai came out, it's supposed to be Mai Tai. Like supposedly somebody made a drink in Waikiki or someplace, and the guy was like, oh, Mai Tai, and it just became the Mai Tai. So yeah, the similarities in languages between Hawaii, so definitely the South Pacific somewhere, but I don't know exactly where it was. And that's, they're gonna get back to like the food sourcing, like you said, like the people in Moloka, if there was no access to Moloka, and they had to solely rely on the food and that's coming in to the stores. I mean, the cost of a steak there is insane. Yeah. Hamburger is insane. So like a majority of the families are eating axis deer, ground axis deer, teriyaki axis deer. What was I gonna say? But
well, did you look? We're like having so much fun. We're moving through time so quick. There was like how long, or that travel from the South Pacific as it set with the technology of boats that they had at the time. Mm-hmm. Do you know how long that journey would take? It was just
over a month, because they did it with what's the boat called the Hokulea, and they basically traced their back through, and they didn't use anything but the stars to guide them. And so they launched off of Oahu, and so there's this thing called the Eddie Aikau Big Wave Surf Competition. And so Eddie Aikau was a lifeguard, and he was on the original Hokulea. And so they set sail off of Oahu. They capsized in the middle of the night sometime. They never found him again. and he was a big wave surfer. And he said, I'm going to grab my surfboard, I'm going to paddle. And then now there's a remnant surf contest for like the biggest waves in Waimea Bay where he was a lifeguard at. But so back in the 80s, they were doing that. They were trying to pursue it, and then they finally did. And now the Hokulea has traveled around the world by traveling just with stars. Yeah, so you think, like, the crazy thing is, you know, you look at like how the Hawaiians must have gotten to Hawaii. You know, they probably had, okay, we got 5 days worth of food on the boat. They go out 3 days, they see what they can see, they come back.
Yeah.
You know, for them to be like a month in, the amount of food that they must have had on the boat, the supplies that they had, to get there, be like, oh, there's islands in here, sweet, and then go back. And then they say they went back a bunch of times.
Oh, really?
And then they ended up
taking a big group.
yeah, and then just basically not coming back, and just either the people that were going back died and didn't tell the other people down, or they
Yeah.
decided to just make the archipelago.
And so
Hawaii theirs.
Wildlife, did the hogs come from that area?
The first hogs came from Polynesia. Okay. Yeah, it was with the Hawaiians. So, like, you know, with pigs, it's so crazy.
Just got a
because-
bunch of hogs on your boat for a month long.
Exactly. You had to have
like,
at least
you look
one
so
of these.
tasty, but I'm going to keep fishing.
I got to keep going. Exactly. That bacon I need, but I'm just going to eat this mahi-mahi that we just caught. But yeah, it's like, you know, so they have what's called the canoe plants. So like where the Hawaiians were traveling, like they knew they had, with these like plants and these animals, they could survive. And so it was like the coconut, the niu, the breadfruit, you know, taro, all of these things that was going to be essential for life. And then they had a pig, you know, so like.
Well, the taro wasn't native to Hawaii either.
There's different parts of kalo that is, but kalo is found all through the Pacific.
Yeah.
Or taro is found all through the Pacific. You know, and like the name of our reforestation project is called Haloa Aina, and Haloa is the legend of the first Hawaiian. So basically, you had Father Sky and Mother Earth had a baby, and their first baby was the heavens and the stars, and then the heavens and the stars was going to have a child with Father Sky, and this was going to be the first kane, and the first kane was born. It was so badly deformed that it looked like a bulb, so they buried it, and the stars in the heavens cried over this gravesite. Out came a taro plant. And then they had another child, and their first child was in fact the first kane, which is Haloa too. So like taro plant and Hawaiian people, kane, man, are brothers. And so that's the relationship between the taro plant. And then the legend has it that, you know, Haloa 2 carried his older brother, Haloa 1, to all of the islands and planted the tree, the kalo.
Interesting.
So you got all of these different types of kalo that are just found in Hawaii, but the same thing like in Polynesia as well.
Have you noticed within the mythology of Hawaii that there's any similarities to other cultures?
I don't know too much of like the native Hawaiians, but my dad, when he was here, not here, but in Colorado State, you know, he sat in those big steam tents with Native Hawaiian or Native Americans and smoked, and they would share stories. And there was a lot of similarities, you know, as far as the mythology of how the gods came here and the skies and who's revered and this and that. But as far as me personally, I don't know enough about it to even talk about that.
And so we got going on Chief of War as we were talking about your family's heritage on the island. And I don't think we got to exactly like how far back you can.
Forever. So like because once you get to Hawaiians, then you can go back to forever. You know, because then.
So your lineage goes back to when.
So I've got a little bit of Hawaiian blood in me.
Yeah.
I've lost some weight recently, so I don't have as much Hawaiian blood in me. But you know, so the Hawaiian that I have, you can link you back. You know, and then so like my great grandfather was half Chinese, half Hawaiian. So my great grandfather married Victoria Keli'io Kamamalu, and then they had my father and my great grandfather. But every generation after that was all like wanted the blonde Scandinavian girl to be their wife partner. So then like my grandfather, that's half Chinese, half Hawaiian, married my great grandma Lee, which is Irene Papaberry from England. And my grandfather married Catherine Bonner from Oregon. And then my dad married Lillian Motas from the Philippines, and
Yeah.
then I married Sonali Kwanpet from Laos.
Yeah.
So we haven't done so good on keeping the Hawaiian blood strong. But if you do
unique, at
follow
least.
that trickle of a creek, you can
Yeah.
follow it to the ocean that is Hawaii.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And the weaponry that you kind of see within the Chief of War series, and then the advent of archery on the island. Do you know exactly when
The
when
archery
first
came
bows?
during like after Captain Cook's era.
Okay.
And so like there's one legend that I remember reading about or being told about. It was about this guy that lived in Waipio Valley, and he was a master with the bow and arrow. And the challenge was how many rats they could shoot with their bow and arrow. And like he was in a competition or whatever, and he ended up shooting like 4 in one shot, and he just came back with this huge amount of rats that just destroyed everybody. And I was all like, and it happened down in Waipio Valley, which is right where I live. And so I'm like, that's my boy down there.
Yeah.
You know, and so as far as like the archery and crossbows and that kind of stuff, that came all post, Captain Cook, post missionary time.
Was there a certain type of tree/wood that they were using that they found worked best for
the
bows?
archery?
Yeah.
So I know that the willy willy trees is what they used to bend and kind of shape into the ama on the canoe. But all of like, the really hardwoods, that ko and kawila and stuff like that and ohia are all real strong woods that don't have a good memory. So they always want to spring back. I can only imagine that that's what they made their bows with.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, if you look back at like the Hawaiians, like war tools, they were primitive, but they were freaking gnarly.
Yeah.
Like you had these spades with knife jaws or shark teeth on it. You had these spears that, you see these spears at like the different museums, and they're like 14, 15 feet long, and they're chucking these things at people. Like,
Yeah.
like
well, that too, and the shark teeth brass knuckles. So in the show, I think it's in the first episode
Yeah.
when they get a shark. Do you know what plant they're using? They have like this bundle of stuff, and then they get the shark close to the boat, and then they're like fluffing this stuff into the gills of the shark to like sedate it.
I think it's something along the lines of ava, like the kava root that you drink.
Yeah.
So like the ava, and I don't know if it's that plant in particular, but I know that that's how they used to do it. Like they would put it in the fish. So they would take that thing and put it into like the caves of fish, and the fish would float to the surface because they would get sedated and stuff.
God, I wonder how they found that out.
Just drinking it. You know how you find out which mushrooms you can eat or not? You eat a little bit.
Just human experiments.
Give it to the pig, see what happens to the pig.
Yeah. What else were they doing for weaponry, like in those early days?
So you got the spears, you got clubs, and then you got those brass knuckles, and then the spades and stuff like that. And so the spears, like the tips of some of the spears, were made with marlin bills. So you take the marlin bill, shave it down, and then strap that to the front of a spear or the front of a handle, and that was your sword, essentially.
Yeah.
Which
We know can be rather devastating.
That was crazy as it came between the motor and the raft that we were on.
Little side story here. So that was the first time I came down to your area on the Big Island, and we go marlin hunting. And we've got Macy, who's actually helping with the podcast now. So she's on the boat filming, and we get into a marlin pretty quick. Yeah. And typically, like, you club it to get onto the boat before you hook it, but for some reason you decided to hook it first. I don't know if that was just excitement on your part or
all of the above.
But that thing, you got the hook in that thing, and if I remember right, it was still green because we ended up hooking it in the eye.
Yes.
And so it came to the boat, and it was not tired at all.
It was not ready to be brought on boat at all.
And that thing went all over the place. It broke its bill, and then it slashed Macy across the back. Luckily, that's all that happened. But that, and I've seen like some gnarly Marlin High, like it can go south real quick.
Like, yeah, I mean, that was like even Cyrus to this day, the boat captain we were with, was all like, that was truly Western. Like that was insane. Yeah, because we hooked it in the eye, and when you hook a marlin in the eye, it just happens sometimes. They don't know what's going on. They just know it hurts, so they come to the side of the boat. And like if you look at the pictures that Macy's took, like that fish is bright blue with some greens, like it is full alive. And I remember putting my gaff in it, and as soon as that gaff touched that fish, he was like, don't like this. And he tried to jump into the boat. We're holding him off. And that's what Cyrus is all like. You can tell Logan was a bad mother trucker one day because he had zero fear, came running in with the bat, just swinging all his might, trying to hit the bat.
I'm just so glad I didn't hit you with that club, man, because I was just like, I hit the boat as many times as I hit the fish. And it was so Western. We'll make a little promo with that footy because it was wild. And
then you just got Rihanna screaming in the chair.
Oh yeah, she's just. I think that's why I was just like, I got to take care of this because she was freaking out.
For sure, the thing was halfway in the boat.
She was in the chair,
strapped.
Right? So she was strapped in. So there was nothing. Like she had no course of action to get out of the way of danger with that, and she just screaming her head off. Oh, that was so fun.
And then half an hour later, Jonathan hooks his. And we do it the right way. Yeah. We club it before we put the hook in it, and it just slides over the side of the boat like no drama.
That's how you do it.
It's like, oh, that's the way we're supposed to do it.
Yeah, and that was, I think we jumped in the water for a little bit that day.
Yeah, we found some sharks,
and that was really fun to like see how you kind of operate within the water. Absolutely no fear, because we came up to one of the buoys and there was a shark there when we got there. And that just seems like one of the things you have to become acquainted to life fishing in the water as a spear fisherman is there's sharks everywhere. And you just have to figure out how you're going to adapt to that.
They're a predator just like you. And usually if you see sharks, the fish that you're trying to hunt, the big predatory fish, the wahoo, the tuna, the marlins are going to be in that area as well. So you learn to just kind of swim shoulder to shoulder with them, and you just got to be calm. I've had some hairy situations with them, but nothing crazy. I remember, Cole Kramer, you can tell he's around big animals because we jump in the water and we're floating around one of these buoys, and there's, and he and Sloan Brown was with us and jumped in the water and we were floating around. And as soon as I jumped in the water, I saw how many sharks there were. I was like, hey, only one of you guys at a time, because I don't want to keep track of two of you guys with this many sharks in the water. But there was one period where I look at Cole, and he's 10 or 15 feet in front of me, and maybe a little further, and I point because this shark is swimming underneath him, like 2 or 3 feet below the surface, like underneath him. And I just kind of point at him. And tell him point down. And he looks down. As soon as he looks down, this shark swims right underneath him. But he had no reaction. Like, I was fully expecting him to walk on water back to the boat.
Yeah.
He just looked up. And then by the time he looked back up to me, I was right next to him. I was like, you good? He's all like, that was close. I was all like, bro, you handled that so well. But he was just like, well, I looked at you. You were pretty calm, and you just pointed at it. And so I just figured I'd follow your suit. If you were scared, then I was going to be scared. But you can definitely tell Cole's been around some big, scary animals for him to just look down and be like, oh, okay, shark's underneath me.
Yeah. The biggest.
Yeah.
The biggest, the world record brown bear. Yeah. I guess you could say that. Kind of using the bear as a comparison, I guess. So, depending on the seasonality of brown bears and grizzly bears, they're way more vicious and violent during certain points of the season and the year. How do you navigate that with sharks in the water? Is there comfort periods depending on certain conditions that you're okay sometimes, but you're very cautious at other times?
Everything's okay until you spearfish. That's where you basically rang the doorbell or the dinner bell, for them. And so as soon as there's places where they're so conditioned where they hear the spear gun go off, they know there's a struggling fish, and they show up to eat. And, everything's fine and dandy until when you shoot a fish and you're fighting this big fish, then it's, okay, I have to be cautious about what I'm going to do. majority of the time, you're basically, if you're with a buddy and he shoots a fish, your job is to fend off the sharks coming for that fish. So you're going down there and you're poking it off, and only when you've got really big sharks do you have to worry about, any of that. But a majority of the sharks that when you're in the water trying to fend them off are oceanic whitetips or sandbars or silkies, and they tap out at, 9 or 10 feet long, which are big fish. But, you can in the water, I'm just to call it 6 feet, I've got 3-foot fins on and I got a spear gun in my hand. So all of a sudden I look like I'm 10 feet, so I'm a big fish in the water as well, that, kind of points off and got a pointy thing as well. So I can poke my way around. But yeah, that's there's no January, February is the worst months or their mating season or whatever it is. Everything's fine and dandy until you pull the trigger. And like I did what's called the bull shark rodeo a couple of years ago down in Florida, and it's something I'll never do again. And I thought it was that time the stupidest thing I think I did at the time. But you get over these shipwrecks and you get an empty plastic water bottle and you crinkle it, and it sounds basically like fish getting chewed on or bones breaking. And these bull sharks now will leave this shipwreck that's 100, 150 feet below the surface. And we jumped in the water clarity was like 25 feet. And all of a sudden these bull sharks start to appear and then come back down, and they're kind of coming in and out of the visibility range. And every now and then there's a cobia behind the back of one. And so
cobia?
Cobia, it's this lemon fish. Really, I think it's called cobia is its name, but I think like the English name is lemon fish. Really, really good eating fish, prized fish, but they basically coast behind bull sharks or just kind of any shark that's in the water. And so you'd sit there and these bull sharks would come through, and then all of a sudden one would have a good cobia behind it. So you shoot the cobia. The cobia's first instinct is try to run back to the shipwreck. Well, when they get down there, they're getting chased by, a dozen bull sharks. Yeah. And so they turn around and run back to the surface looking for cover. And the only thing at the surface is you. So all of a sudden they come and hide underneath you. And so you got to grab them and subdue them real quick and then get them on the boat. And there was a time my buddy shot a king mackerel, and it just went berserk. And it turned into 20 bull sharks just getting crazy. And once one of the bull sharks got a hold of the fish, it was like shark fin soup. It was like, holy geez. And then me and my buddy were like back to back, just pushing sharks off. Like, so there's definitely certain parts of the world that you got to jump in the water a little bit more cautiously and just kind of have your head on a swivel. As far as like sharks go, Hawaii shark problem or shark numbers isn't anything near where they are in the Bahamas, in Florida, or in parts of French Polynesia, where they, I've got friends that'll shoot 100-pound wahoo or 200-pound dogtooth tuna, and before it's halfway up, is completely consumed because the amount of sharks that have just taken bites out of it. So Hawaii, we still are relatively shark free, but we do have some. But yeah, you just got to make sure that you're okay with it especially when you're in the deeper water. Shallow reef stuff, like where you're spearing stuff with a pole spear, like the fish that are on my arm, you're pretty safe.
Yeah. And when did you start really becoming a passionate spear fisherman?
Like I started spearfishing just following my dad when we first moved back to Hawaii when I was 10, and followed him. But like for the first couple of years, I was just bag boy, followed him to kind of learn the fish to spear, learn the currents, learn, basically how to get in and out of the water. And then it wasn't until 2014 did I find that there was competition spearfishing. And so I did my first nationals, and did fairly well there, and then did another nationals in Florida, and then earned my spot on the USA spearfishing team. And then got to travel to Greece and Portugal, more recently Spain for the World Spearfishing Championships, and got to represent Team USA. And in Greece, in 2016, we were spearing fish. My deepest fish I speared there was 192 feet on a single breath of air, just going and then going, hitting the bottom, spearing a fish, and fighting it to the surface. And
like, how long does that process? I mean, 192 feet, just getting that far down.
So you travel at like your peak speed at about a meter a second average, and so you're at, call it 60 meters. You're a minute down and a minute back up because you ascend the same time. And so basically, you've got about a minute to hunt and kill your fish before you start to head up back up to the surface.
So you're like you got 3 minutes.
3
for
minutes.
the full
I
activity.
think some of the dives were going just a little bit over 3 minutes, but a majority of them were 3 minutes long.
Now, when you're, say, at that depth, are you working to, I think reverse buoyancy is the correct term there, to where you actually like speed up at a certain depth?
Oh yeah, you start to speed up. So you wear a particular type of weight around your waist so that you're buoyant. You want to be neutrally buoyant at 30 feet or at 10 meters. Because the fact of, when you're coming back up and you're low in oxygen and your body wants that so bad, you don't have to work as hard. All of a sudden you're starting to move quicker back up to the surface. But if something happens to you, the chances of you doing what's called shallow water blackout is within that first 30 feet. And so if you black out, you'll float to the surface and somebody can find you. And hopefully you've got your buddy there to ensure that your airway is clear of air or clear of water. So yeah, you're falling at an incredible speed towards the end, and just like when you're elk hunting, if you came running through the forest, everything's going to look at you and run away. So when you're flying down there, the last like 30 or 40 feet before you hit the surface, you got to slow yourself down. And the only way you slow yourself down is by flexing your feet or moving your body in a certain way and kind of using up muscles to stiffen up so that you coast to the bottom opposed to hitting the bottom hard. And that was probably some of the coolest diving I've ever done because you're just free falling for so long. That's where a good dive watch was pretty crucial because, when you're diving 60, 70 feet, you can wait till your body's like, hey, you need to breathe, dumbass. Go get some air. If you wait for that long and you've got a minute ascent while you're using your muscles, you've waited too long. And so you set your watch alarm to go for, 2:15 to be like, hey, if you hear this alarm, idiot, you got to get up to the surface now, leave whatever you're doing. But did well in Greece, finished 9th in the world, which is like the highest an American has finished, this side of 2000. And then just kind of started competing and just loving it.
And how does that work as far as the competition side of things go for
Points
worlds?
wide.
Yeah, like is it one specific competition in one specific place, or is it a culmination of different spearfishing trips throughout the course of a season?
So it's just one. So it's the World Championships. It's a 2-day competition. And the way that you earn your spot on the world team is you have to do 2 consecutive U.S. nationals. And so the U.S. nationals, will have different regions, whether it's Hawaii, West Coast, Midwest, so you can go spear in the lake.
I think you did one in the Ozarks a couple years ago or something like that.
In Lake Powell.
Powell?
Yeah, Lake Powell. We did one. They have them all over the U.S., though, from Nebraska to Arkansas to, Beaver Lake's got some cool fish. And it's a part of the spearfishing world that I had no interest in until I started doing it. And like you were talking about how coconut, all of a sudden it's just something that, kind of later in your life you found. Like the spearfishing in a lake, like I had no interest in ever doing, never thought I'd ever have it. And then jumped in the water and was like, this is pretty rad. There's a lot of fish to spear. Like there's amazing spearfishing in Utah. And the cool thing with Utah is it's one of the states out here that you can spear game fish. So you can spear brook trout and you can spear rainbows and browns, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, walleye. In other states, they basically keep it to rough water, which is like your carp and drums, and some gar and stuff like that. But so you got to do 2 nationals, and then they take the top 3 ranked U.S. spearfishermen to the World Championships. And then at the World Championships, the way that you score your points is they have basically list A, B, C of fish. They'll have different bonuses for filling out, shooting your quota on a type of fish, so there's a little bit of strategy that goes into it. And so, like, say you and I are competing, I shoot 8 fish, but 6 of them are redfish and 2 of them are bluefish. If you shoot 5 fish that are basically the same size as my fish, but you get an additional bonus for every red, yellow, green, blue, purple fish that you speared, the bonuses can add up to eliminate some of the fish that I speared. So basically you prove that your prowess is spearfishing. I'm really good at shooting redfish and a couple of bluefish, but you can spear any fish that's in front of you. And so they give you added bonuses for every new species of fish that you bring in. So when you're lying on the bottom if you've already got a redfish that is a pound and a bluefish and a redfish say a redfish that's a pound and a half swims up to you, but a bluefish is there and it's 1 pound, you're better off shooting that 1 pound bluefish, because then you have a diversity and all the bonuses will actually eclipse that of the 1.5 pound redfish.
So talk me through that in your head. Like if you're doing a competition and you're like, I'm going to go down to 192 feet. You get down that deep and then you've basically got 60 seconds to sit down there and hopefully spear a fish. How are you doing that effectively?
So what a lot of times is like, just, like every other sport out there, it's the time that you put before competition that really sets you up for success. So you go up there for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, however much time you can get away from the family and work, and scout your ass off. You're zigzagging up there. You're naming fish that you'll probably never see again. You find areas that you really like. And then the day of competition, you kind of have a game plan. Well, I'm going to go A, B, C, D. You want them relatively close together so there isn't much time out of water that you're spending. And so there's a whole big kind of game plan and strategy that you're trying to do. And then, in Greece, when we were diving that deep, it was like, okay, I get 1 dive every 15 minutes. Because so the rule of thumb that me and my buddy followed was depth in meters divided by 5 is how many minutes you had to stay at the surface. So if you went to 50, 10 minutes before you went back down, just because you had to off-gas all the nitrogen that your body was building up, and so that you didn't get the free diving bends, and just kind of stayed, on the threshold of where it's safe. And so you're breathing up, you got to get your mindset. You've got to get into that comfortable spot, slow your heart rate down, do long breaths. And then when you finally take that breath, it's just get into your comfortable spot and just free fall. Spearfishing is such the lazy man sport, is because when you're trying to breathe up, you want to do as least amount as possible. Don't move, don't flex a muscle, just work on your breathing. And then when you free fall, when you're diving, after you start to kick and you get into that negative buoyancy that we were talking about, get into the streamline, don't get in your way, and just free fall. And then when you're on the bottom, don't move, lay down. If you have to move very slowly, get from A to B and try and get a shot at the fish. And then at the surface, and when you're trying to ascend, it's the same thing. When your brain is telling you, or your lungs are telling you like, hey, speed up, we need air, your brain has to take over and say, actually, mother trucker, this is my ship. We're going to kick slowly, because your efficiency doesn't go up too much by kicking harder and faster. If you kick slow and, really move with purpose, you get to the surface and you conserve a lot more oxygen than you'd use if you sped up your kick. It's like a sprinter to a long distance guy. You just got to keep that pace.
Yeah. It's so counterintuitive.
It's crazy.
And when you're down there at the bottom, like, are you looking around? Are you like facing a certain direction that you're trying to hopefully put yourself in a good position to where you can shoot one of these things? Like, how is that strategy incorporated into it?
It stems from archery hunting, because that's all of the above. You're looking for shadows to hide in. You're looking, so like, unlike archery hunting where you're trying to have that element of surprise because you don't want to be, picked up or detected. Every fish knows you're coming to the bottom. They feel the vibrations, so, you got to treat the fish that you want to shoot like the pretty girl at the bar. You can't stare at them. You can't act all
Liquor
weird.
'em up.
Exactly. you dust a little bit, you get their attention, and you just forget about them. And you try and befriend the small, ugly fish so that the prize fish can come in. That's the hardest part, is trying to stay down there still. And when you're at that deep, your body's under so much pressure. You can't move your head like this, because you can get tracheal shift. You can, move your lungs and get a lung squeeze. So basically, like, if you jaw yourself too much when you're down there and there's so much pressure on your lungs, like, you can rip the pleural air off of your lungs and start to fill up with blood. And so they call it a lung squeeze, because you don't feel it until you start to rise into the surface. Shit. And when your lungs start to expand again, all of a sudden that void is filled with blood and it can't expand anymore. So it feels like someone's squeezing your lungs.
Oh, shit. Has that ever happened to you?
No, thankfully not. But I know people that have.
Or the tracheal shift?
Yeah, so like your neck, because of all of the air that's in there and it's compressed, like, you can move your neck too much and that tracheal shift will tear. And then the same thing, the blood will start to set up, and then people will start to, so like friends of mine have had that where they come back up to the surface and they're just coughing up blood. It's because they've just basically put some trauma in their esophagus. And so when you're at the bottom, yes, as much as you want to look around, it's all very slow movements. And then just like anything else, like you need to move slow to get your spear gun in ready to shoot. And so like if you're on the bottom and you start to move your way along, you just got to do everything very slowly because you don't want to consume too much oxygen down there. And then as soon as you shoot a fish, then all of that goes out the window. But you still got, you want to try and hold the fish, not let them go in the hole, because especially during competition, you shoot a big fish, a grouper, and it goes in the hole. Well, it's 15 minutes before you can get back down there. That fish, who knows what's happening?
Yeah.
He could rip off. He could, then you've spent basically 45 minutes trying to get a fish out of a hole. And if he's not on the spear tip anymore, then you've wasted, 20% of your day of diving during competition. So after you shoot the fish, you want to try and secure him as best as you can, get off the reef, and then swim up to the surface free spool. And so...
Are you trying to kill the fish as quick as possible?
You try and do as best as you can to try and subdue them as you can. There's a stone shot that's like right behind the eye. You hit their lateral bone and they just die instantly. That's the goal.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
What if you don't? Are you carrying a knife with you at all times?
You're not going to kill them on the bottom.
Yeah.
You got to kill them on the surface. But when you're diving that deep, by the time they come to the surface, their air bladders are blown out and they've done X, Y, and Z. So they're pretty much dead.
But I mean, I could see how problems may arise if you shoot a big fish.
Yeah.
And you don't kill it. And it's giving you issues on the way up. And it's pulling you. And you've got to fight it, so you're using more oxygen. Like, what do you do in that case? Do you, let it go and then try and get it later?
So you have a reel on the bottom of your gun.
Yeah.
And so, that reel has about 250 feet of line on it. And so you can let that reel go, but, never straight above. It's always at an angle.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important to just kind of hold the fish in place until you get off to the surface, or just off the reef, I mean, and then start to let your line out. But if you don't shoot your fish well and he's full of life, he can spool you before you get to the surface. And then you have a decision to make.
Yeah.
If you're 30 feet down or 40 feet down and you don't have any more line on your reel, do I start kicking hard, trying to force myself up to the surface so I can breathe again, or do I let that gun go?
Yeah.
And I have no friends that have done both. And, a good friend of mine just talked about, Mark Healy, Mark, he talked about in his the story of that he shot this gigantic uku, world record, dream fish, 400-inch bull fish, and that's what happened. He shot him deep. He was coming back up to the surface. He saw that he was running out of line. He was still further away from the surface than he wanted to be. He ended up pushing it a little too hard, and he suffered what's called a shallow water blackout. But that's why it's so important to dive with a friend or a buddy watching you, because then his buddy grabbed him, and he said the last thing he remembered was coming up going, oh, fuck. And then he blacked out, and then he remembered waking up on the boat. So his friend caught him, brought him to the surface. He was breathing, threw him in the boat, and then he swallowed a little bit of water. So he coughed up some water, and then they ran him into shore, and he spent the night in the hospital. But
so when you're doing these competitions, do you have somebody with you, though?
There's someone on the boat watching, but you can't have a non-diver in the water with you, which is kind of gnarly.
Yeah.
And especially when we're diving that deep. But not always worlds are that deep. Like in Portugal and Spain, I mean, the guy that won in Portugal, his stomach was basically on the ground shooting fish. It was so shallow that his head was out of the water, but his stomach was on the ground.
Oh, really?
He was in 8 inches deep water, foot deep water, shooting these mullets as they were running past. And so that's the cool thing with spearfishing, is that it kind of covers, it's like archery hunting. You can go shoot elk at the, bighorn sheep at the top of the mountain, all the way access deer on the shoreline. And it kind of takes you into every kind of realm. And you've got to be good at every area to be successful. And that's why it's so much fun.
And ocean encounters, I specifically remember the first time we met. and I was going through your Instagram, and there's a photo of you with 3 whales in the middle of the ocean, and I was just like, holy shit, like how do you get yourself in a position to be able to capture that photo? What other kind of unique ocean experiences have you had?
That's the cool thing about with spearfishing, you know, and even archery hunting. Like a bow in my hand and my spear gun takes me into the mountains or into the water because I'm going to go look for food. But some of the most memorable experiences I've had them have nothing to do with me harvesting anything. Like that picture you're talking about is me with 3 huge sperm whales. You know, another really cool one is I swam with a whale shark for like 45 minutes one time, and it was a relatively small whale shark. It was only 12 or 14 feet long, but we swam together for 45 minutes. You know, I've had humpback whales come up, you know, where I can see their eyeball and they're checking me out as much as I'm checking them out. You know, but some of the coolest experiences that I've ever had, I think, deal with octopus.
Yeah.
Like, because they're
What's
just
your theory on octopus? Because
they taste great.
They taste great. So I couldn't be specific as to the intelligence level of them, but there's theories that they came from meteors and then populated the Earth.
Populated the Earth. I have no idea about that stuff. But they are incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where a lot of people have a hard time grasping, I'm going to go eat an octopus. You know, because they are so smart, and you know, in the captive setting, you know, they solve puzzles, they open up jars, they go through mazes, and then they have relationships with their caretakers. You know, like I don't know if you've seen The Octopus Teacher. You know,
I haven't watched it yet.
It's about a guy that finds an octopus and he befriends him in this tide pool in South Africa, and if everything in that story is true, I mean, he had a full relationship. It was like a love story, basically, he had with this octopus. And but it's crazy. I mean, for them to be able to look at a surrounding and change their colors and the texture of their skin, and then when you're lying on the bottom and you're looking at them or you're trying to catch them, you know, they're looking at you from one side as they're trying to make their escape on the other side, you know, or they're shooting ink at you and trying to do an escape. But I mean, as far as food goes, they're probably one of the most sustainable foods out there because they reproduce so quickly and their life cycle is so short. You know, I think a 1.5-year-old octopus is an old octopus, and everything eats them in the ocean. So but I really like them, and like that's the first tattoo I ever got was an octopus on my shoulder. Is because like every octopus I caught was always like a friend or my dad or a buddy or my brothers. We all kind of teamed up and caught them.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
So like first you've got we call it the taco eye, because taco is Japanese for octopus. And so we use taco in Hawaii instead more than octopus. Then the Hawaiian word is he'e. So you either hear he'e or taco. And so you got to develop the taco eye, you know, and basically sing a perfectly camouflaged octopus along the rubble of the sea bottom. And so that takes time and effort to try and get to that. But once you kind of pick that up, then it's like, you know, finding mule deer in sagebrush, finding an antler tip. You're just trying to find subtle differences to figure out what it looks like and kind of pick them up. But so once you find one, they usually will suck into their hole and you've got to tickle them out. Because if you try and jab your spear in there too hard, could kill them or piss them off and they'll stay in their hole and then you'll never get them out of their hole. So you got to kind of irritate them when they come out of the hole. You grab them and then you got to quickly dispatch them. And the way that you can dispatch them, I find the easiest way is biting between their eyes. And so you hold them by the head like this and their whole body will hold down. And then you just bite. And there's a hard part between their eyes that basically is their brain. And you bite that, you hear a crunch, and then they turn white and they're dead. Huh. You know, and so it's like Easter egg hunting, you know, for adults. It's a lot of fun, and then yeah, they taste great. Like we eat them all the time in Hawaii. We make poke with them. We put them in stir fries. We kind of eat it everywhere.
So that incident with the 3 sperm whales, like how did that come about?
We were with John Hart actually, and Jay Beyer, and we went on a trip down south and had some friends with me that were amazing photographers. My buddy Justin Turkowski and Perrin James. and just world-renowned photographers. And so we were driving up. So I was helping Jay and John get in the water so they could swim with these sperm whales, and Perrin and Justin jumped in with their cameras to kind of capture that.
But they just you guys were just out there and they just appeared?
So sperm whales are pretty rare in Hawaii, but you see them and they're like in the middle of the day, most times they're just kind of cruising on the surface. They're not moving fast. They're not diving deep. And so we drove past and we're like, you see whales all the time. And all of a sudden Cyrus was all like, bro, those are sperm whales. And you don't get a chance to swim with them too often. And so they jumped in, and I was helping them get in the boat or get off the boat. And so I just sat on the boat, and then we went way up in front and we parked in front of them. And then Cyrus is all like, bro, they're coming straight for us, because you can't approach whales. Like, that is against the law. You can't harass them. If you're sitting still or you're way in front of them and you get off and they swim past you, that's okay. But you can't drive up to a whale and jump off at them. But if they swim up to you, that's okay. And so we were way out in front, just kind of watching the situation where they were swimming in. And then he's like, bro, they're coming right at us. So I put my mask on real quick, jumped over. And I mean, they use echolocation, right, to kind of figure out what you are. And like, they're like the series of clicks, like you could feel it in your chest. Like, as they were swimming towards me, I was like, these truckers are trying to figure out what the heck I am, if they're going to eat me or not. You know, and they got teeth. They're not krill eaters. They're like,
I mean,
fish and
their mouths are huge, right? Like you could just swim into their mouth.
Oh yeah, and they got big ass teeth. You know, and they go dive and eat giant squid.
Yeah,
you know, that's what their diet is. And so like, I'm nothing.
That's the Moby Dick whale, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
Big, huge teeth whale.
They can be super violent.
Well, if they want to be. I mean, they're huge. I mean, even if they're just trying to be gentle, you know, like it'd be like a buffalo just kind of rubbing up on you. Well, they don't know how strong they are. And so like I could feel them kind of checking me out, and they were only like 40 yards and coming straight at me.
All three of them.
All three of them. And then I dove down just so I could get a closer look looking at them. And just so happened Perrin and Jay were on the other side and took that picture. But that's like one of my favorite pictures ever. I mean, it kind of puts into perspective how big they are.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I mean, you realize like when you jump in that water, you are the weak link. Like, you are not going to outrun anything. You're not going to out hide anything. You're definitely not going to out poke anything. You know, like if a shark or a whale wanted to eat you, like we're lucky that killer whales and sperm whales don't fancy the taste of us, because we would be jacked.
Yeah.
There was nothing we could do.
And was that the first time that you had encounters with?
Yeah, that's the first time. I've only swam with them twice. You know, and like you swim with whales and like humpback whales, we see them all the time, and they come in relatively close to shore. So like one time I was in like 50 feet of water looking for an octopus, and we had what's called a bull run. So it's like a female coming into estrus, and then all these bulls chase the one female, and whoever can last the longest gets the opportunity to breed with the female. But they do it in silence, and they're flying. And so I'm sitting there looking for octopus. All of a sudden I look up, and there's this whale coming straight at me, and it swims right past me. I was like, that was nuts. And then right behind it was a series of like 10 other humpback whales. And we're in 40 feet of water, 50 feet of water. And so like they're on all sides of me. And then when you get behind them, the amount of current that is coming off of them, like it just fully ragdolls you.
Oh, yeah.
It was crazy.
Huh. Dude, that's so gnarly. You have to feel so powerless.
Yeah.
You're going through that. You're just like, I hope I don't die as we go through this, and like I don't end up like Jonah living in the side of a whale for a little while. Dude, that's so crazy. I mean, sperm whales, like it's hard to fathom the size and the scale of those things, and then putting that in your mind's eye, but then to be in the, and you were pretty far out from the coast, right?
Over 10, 15 miles from shoreline.
Middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Just water for as far as you can
and
see.
water down for as far as you can see. You know,
those things are just coming up. It had to feel super cerebral and almost like heavenly in a sense.
Like there's times when you experience stuff like that you forget that you're human. For me, at least, like when you get like an instance like that, when you're holding your breath and you're like, there's times where you're like so comfortable and you're so out of your body that you're like, oh my God, I gotta go breathe. You know, you're out of the water and you forget like you have to take a breath.
Yeah.
And it's almost it's pretty spiritual, when you get out there and you experience it and you see it. You see the power, the raw power that they have. Like a humpback whale, like they can almost jump their whole body out of the water. To think about that, they're freaking school buses that with a tail can jump out of the water.
Yeah.
Like it's...
And the force necessary to have the capability to do that.
Yeah.
And that much. Yeah. I wonder what the science is on that for them, like how much that takes for them to actually get out of the water.
Yeah. Even just their nose out of the water. Like if you're in a pool and you jump off the bottom, if you can get your waist out of the water, like you're doing good for yourself. Like that, whales are jumping their whole body out of the water.
Yeah. Tons and tons of weight just flying through the air.
Flopping through the air. It's crazy.
And then there was that, the marina that we would go fishing out of. And there's that, what do you call that old shark that's out of there?
Oh, Laverne?
Laverne.
That's a big shark. Big old tiger shark that has just kind of become a legend over there. But she's giant. She's got to be 14 feet long and 14 feet around at least. Like she is a box.
14 feet around.
Have you ever seen a picture of Laverne?
I mean, yeah, I think at one point you showed me, but like I don't know if we got into the measurements, but that's like for a shark to be that big.
It's like a Dodge Ram swimming through the water. And
tiger sharks are aggressive, right?
I don't know if they're necessarily aggressive, but they're opportunists.
That's the thing about Hawaii. Like you go down there and like it's not like, will we see a shark? And like, no, there's sharks everywhere.
Yeah.
How do you the different species and the classifications of those and the judgment of danger when you're going about that? How do you work through that?
So the sharks in Hawaii, are relatively mellow. Until there's a dead fish in the water or something like that. But I think the scariest shark out there is the Oceanic whitetail because they're just smart. They're super cunning. They're fast. I've seen them attack free swimming fish before. Been like, what did that fish present for that shark to be like, I can eat that one? So I think as far as like the hierarchy of like sharks that make you feel uncomfortable, like a pissed off Oceanic or a pissed off Silky that's just hungry or freaky, the sandbars and stuff like that. The tiger shark, the thing about the tiger shark is like most times when I've encountered them, like it's been a kind of a mutual respect sort of thing. It seems like they kind of keep their distance and they come close, but never in like a I'm gonna come eat you kind of way. Like your first instance when you see a tiger shark is one of like, you're not going to lie. It's fear. Like you see this big ass shark. I was like, oh shit. But then it gets, that feeling gets replaced with respect and beauty. And then you start to see him swim through and you're like, man, that's a cool creature. Because the sharks that you see is not the problem. It's the sharks you don't see. That's the real issue. So if you see a tiger shark and it's just doing its thing, the chances of that shark looking at you and then coming straight at you, going Mach 10 to eat you, not so much. But if they disappear, like they've got a very good ability to hide themselves in open water. And it makes no sense, but somehow they swim away and they disappear. And then all of a sudden they're behind you. And you're like, how the hell did that happen? Freaky, and what they really like to do is come in from the side where the sun is blinding you. Like if you're sitting here and the sun's over there, they're going to come from that side or from behind you. And it's crazy how in open water, this couple 1,000-pound fish can just disappear and appear. And but so like when the big sharks and stuff like that, like tiger sharks, they're part of it, but I would rather see a tiger shark than a pissed off Oceanic for sure. But I've had my fish taxed by tiger sharks before. Come up and
is that what you call it? Tax? Paying dues.
You got to pay your dues, exactly. Dues. Sooner or later.
Feed the birds.
Like if you take more than you should, the tax collector is going to come show up. So you got to give respect when you're out there and then don't take everything. Exactly. Yeah. Big payments and lots of fear. But it's just part of it. You just jump in the water, and like a lot of it is, it's just like when I was a firefighter. Like I was told in the EMS situation, or the fire. Like you get 1 second of the oh shit, but then you've got to react, and you've got to react calmly. And same thing with spearfishing. Like when you see a shark, you can allow yourself that 1-2 seconds be like, oh shit, but then you've got to react, and you got to react calmly to get yourself out of that situation, and make decisions that are, to save your life.
Yeah. Has there been any other dangerous close calls stick out in your memory?
Just, getting left in the dark. One day with my buddy Wayne and my younger brother, we were spearfishing off the Hamakua coast, and an earthquake happened while we were in the water. And so like all the rocks, you could hear them cracking and everything and that. And then what essentially happened was the water became super, super rough. And I was like, I think I was in the 10th or 11th grade. So Wayne and I were the same age, and my younger brother's a couple years younger than I was. We're trying to get in, and it's just white water pounding. Like you couldn't, the challenges was there. And, Wayne and my younger brother were like, bro, we can't do this. And I was like, what do you mean you can't do this? Like, you're going to die out here? Like, no, come on, we got to do this. Like, they both took their masks off, and they were just, because it was just so white water, you couldn't see anything, and they were choking on water. And so, that was just fear because, like, I don't know if it's, like, I had cancer when I was a baby. So I had stage 4 neuroblastoma. Really? And so, and they took out one of my adrenal glands attached to my kidney, my right kidney, and half of my liver. And so I don't know if it's I don't have that spike in adrenaline. I don't know. Maybe I don't even. That might not even be science or right. But my ability to find.
It has to make an effect.
Yeah. So like even when stuff hits the fan, like I can stay relatively calm.
Yeah.
Like when my wife's screaming at me, I can take it. Okay. But so like we're sitting there, I was like, no, we got to get out of the water. So the ability to stay calm in that situation. But it was scared because, just a weird situation because my younger brother is there. He's like 13. My best friend is there, and they're both freaking out. And it's like, okay. And they're both kind of looking at me like, what are we going to do? It's like, well, we got to get to shore. So I ended up like swimming them in, timing the sets, taking their fins off so that they could run up the rocks as fast as they could. But like that, like you look back at that instance and you're like, man, like we were close. It's like that's like thinking about it now. I mean, that was 25 years ago, and it was scary.
Yeah.
Like I remember sitting there being scared. Told a story that my buddy dropped me off and my flashlight turned off when I was diving by myself, which you should never do anyway. Diving by myself, my light turned off, and all of a sudden I'm floating in the dark for half an hour. I started in 15 feet of water where my buddy in his boat picked me up was like 500 feet of water. Like in New Zealand, we were spearing fish, and all of a sudden my friend started screaming, swam up to her, and she had like a 10-foot mako shark trying to swallow her yellowtail that she just shot. And that fish came blitzing up to us. Luckily, we had spear guns in our hands to poke it away. Like that was a poop in the wetsuit kind of moment.
Oh yeah. And the earthquake you were talking about, was that something that originated in Hawaii, or was that seismic activity based off one of the volcanoes?
It's probably because the big island we have, Kilauea, and that's where a lot of the earthquakes kind of happen around there.
And that's the active volcano.
Yeah.
Right?
And like right now, every now and then you'll get like 1,000-foot fountains off of it. It's pretty rad. But like whenever there's movement of earth, like in an earthquake, you're like, where's the lava going to come out of? And so, but that day, yeah, like the earthquake happened right off the coast of the Hamakua. And so we were pretty close to the center of it. And so it was pretty good shaking. I mean, these boulders are the size of the bus,
Yeah.
And so you're sitting in there, and it's a good thing we weren't like, so we try and spear fish around the rocks with our pole spears, like a fish called a menpachi, which is like a soldier fish. They're underneath the rocks because they're nocturnal. And so you find yourself like head deep in caves trying to shoot. It's like, man, if our head was in there and the freaking earthquake came off,
Yeah, you're done.
and all of these rocks are moving around.
And what happened recently? There was the earthquake in Russia or something like that.
Yeah,
You
and
guys
the
were worried about the
tsunami,
tsunami, and did anything end up coming from that?
The crazy thing is I was in Colorado,
Oh, you were.
and I get this warning on my phone. I'm like, oh shit. So I called my wife. I was like, hey, what are you guys doing? She's like, I'm at work right now. We've got 9 hours when they expect the first wave to come. Thankfully we live far enough off the shoreline that if a tidal wave was to come, we'd be okay. I was like, just get home, make sure the kids are home with you. And then, you know, like the biggest thing is water. So I was all like, grab a case of water on your way home so that you got drinking water if something, if it really does show up. Thankfully, nothing came. But, you know, there's instances like in the 60s, there's a place called Lapua Point that a big tidal wave came in and like the water receded. And so there was an elementary school down there and they all went into the tidewater pools. And then this tidal wave came and, I mean, killed 60 something people just at Lapua Point. And a lot of them were elementary school kids. You know, so you never know which one is going to be the big one, but you've got to be aware and react as like everyone's going to be the big one.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but like, I remember a few years ago when I was in New Zealand, I get a text message from my wife. She's all like, there's a missile coming.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Like,
when was that? What year was that?
Like 2017, 2016.
What was the explanation for that?
Somebody
that
pressed the wrong button, I guess.
That's crazy.
I mean,
There's no way that's the
yeah.
truth of that situation.
Who knows? But like people were freaking out. I mean, for obvious reasons. They're
Yeah.
like, missile inbound, you've got 10 minutes. And so people are like parking and driving into gutters and into lava tubes and just trying to get away. Like I was in New Zealand, my wife's all like, what am I supposed to do? I was all like,
You're always away from
Yeah, I know.
home whenever this shit's going
I'm like,
down.
fill up the water, fill up the tubs with water. I don't know. And so I called a friend of mine that was, he lives in Australia now, but he was a Navy master diver and he's still relatively connected. And so I called him. I was like, hey, what's going on? He's all like, it's a false alarm. And so I called because he's all like, if it wasn't, you know, there's supposedly military efforts that if a missile was coming to Hawaii, they could divert it or blow it up or do whatever they needed to do.
Yeah.
And he's all like, no, it should be fine. So I called my wife. I was like, just fill it up. I don't know. Uncle Rick says that it's supposed to be good. So, but that was freaky. That was like, oh, like that's like you know, it's like what you've probably experienced when you're on deployment and stuff like that. Like the scariest stuff doesn't happen like when it's me in the water or me diving or hunting or whatever it is. It's like, man, like with my buddies that are next to me, like that I feel like I'm in charge of, you know, or my wife and my kids that, you know, that's my responsibility. Like if something's going to come happen to them, that's like the real fear.
Yeah.
Like if it's just me by myself, like I'll be fine. But like as soon as you try to think of that responsibility that you have on others and especially your family, that's where the real fear comes from. Like, you know, my biggest fear is like if fire comes through, or if I'm not at home, you know, and someone comes into our house, like then it's like, you can't do anything. You feel hopeless. That's the scariest part.
Yeah, that too with the Maui fires a couple years ago.
Yeah.
What was that something that could have been prevented, or is that something that you just kind of have to live with, similar to the volcanoes and the earthquakes, or has there been adjustments that have been made?
I know there's been a lot of fire mitigation that has happened since then. And so that's what they kind of, you know, give credit to the fire was that there was too much grass in areas. So there's too much fire fuel for no reason. You know, so like there was dead trees, there was dead grass, and then it was kind of the perfect storm, you know, but like supposedly like the writing was there that this could happen and nothing was done to mitigate that or to help the situation. You know, like everybody thought was like, man, if a fire started here, you'd be screwed. Well, you should have figured out a way to not have that fire start there.
Yeah.
You know, and you hear a lot of different stories of like what happened that day. Supposedly they went out to fight the fire. They thought it was out. They left, and then it reignited, and then it went through. But they had like 80-mile-an-hour winds.
Which
like,
is crazy. Like
how do you stop that? You can't. And then it's all old plantation homes. It's all boardwalks. So everything is basically kindling. You know, you get a little bit of heat going through, and it brushes through. It's crazy. And you hear some of the stories of like, you know, it's super sad. Like you hear the kids, like they went in there, like school was canceled that morning. So they're at home. Their parents are working. You know, so they're sitting in their home. All of a sudden, it starts getting filled with smoke. Like, what do? You know, like I heard of instances where kids ran to their parents' car that was in the garage because they felt safest in the car, and then they died in the car. You know, or they burnt in it. So like all of a sudden you've got all of this, and then there's only one road in and one road out, so the traffic getting out of it was crazy. They weren't diverting it properly, or you hear X, Y, and Z of what kind of happened, and everybody's got an explanation of what should have happened. But at the end of the day, it was just a horrific event.
Did they know exactly what started it? Like
Power lines,
just
fallen power lines.
I think I saw like CCTV video of it was just one of the breakers started sparking or something. That was what it was.
That's what, as best as they can tell, is kind of what happened. Yeah. And then they burnt a little bit, and then you got that dry air. It was already dry in that area, and just insane. It's so sad. Like, and the amount of people that were lost, and and families that'll never get to see their family again, or not even have the closure of it because their bodies completely are ash.
Yeah,
like they're finding, like having dogs and they're sitting down where they're supposed to be, the dogs are finding a human and they're sitting down and it's just ash. And so they're trying to find a tooth or something like that they can try to age it. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, to live through that and experience that and then try to think that, okay, I'm going to have to rebuild here and there's the whole psychology behind it.
Yeah.
For people that have gone overseas and gone through war, and the things that you guys have seen are insane. Like, my father-in-law fought alongside the Americans during the Vietnam War, and he joined when he was like 16. He lied about his age, said that he was old enough to fight. And then when he was 18, America pulled out of Vietnam. And so then all of a sudden, Laos, where he was from, he wasn't safe there anymore. So they're trying to get to Thailand, and the things that he experienced from 16 to 29 years old is, I could not imagine or even want to imagine what he had to live through, from shrapnel in his legs, like his partners getting blown up, to everything that you could imagine that happened in 13 years. Like,
so he was from
Laos.
And then he was working with the Americans. Was he going into Vietnam to work, or was that when we were kind of like doing the cross-border?
I think it was a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Like I asked him, like, you get drunk and stuff like that, and you start to ask him things that you probably shouldn't ask as your father-in-law. But like, I asked him, I was like, you ever, hook up with two girls at one time when you're walking through? And he was all like, sisters one time in the morning and in the afternoon. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, anything crazy? And then he's like, then he stops you and he's all like, no, I thought I was going to die. So it's just being a man.
Yeah.
I just went into these villages just being a man. And, you're not there because you're trying to experience new things or whatever. You're there because you feel like you just got to hump whatever and then leave the next day, and, so it's like that whole concept of like, you think you're going to die for 13 years. Then you ask him like, well, Pop, how many people you think you've killed? He's like, a lot. I was like, how much is a lot? And he's all like, he was the front, right? So like they were trying to protect this hill. So he's the infantry in the front, and people are running across these fields, and he's just sitting there with guns. Just,
yeah.
It's like, who knows how many people, but he's all like, just waves of people would come, and then he would set off the mortars and, the trip lines and blow people up. And I'd be like, so think of like 13 years of that, and then having that mindset and seeing those things. And now he is an amazing gardener. He's got like 350 white pineapples in my backyard. He's, he just constantly keeps himself busy. And like, I talked to my wife about it, and it's like, he says that if he doesn't work, if he's not busy, he feels like he's getting sick. And I think it's just his thoughts are catching up to him, and so he's the machine, that he just goes and he just puts his head down and he just goes to work, and like, that's how he ended up marrying my mother-in-law. Is while he was going back and forth between Thailand, one of the generals, one of the officers, basically in the same position as him, Laos was no longer safe. The safe haven was in Thailand. So they had to go across the river to get to Thailand. Well, this officer had 6 kids, and his wife died, delivering their youngest. He's like, hey, can you help me get my 6 kids across the border to Thailand? And so he helped him, and as a thank you, he gave him his oldest daughter, which is my mother-in-law.
No
and
shit.
So they got married in a Thai refugee camp, had my wife in the Thai refugee camp, And then while they were waiting for their paperwork to come to the States, they found a sponsor family in Arizona. They spent 6 months in the refugee camp. Well, my wife did. 6 months in the refugee camp in there, 6 months in the Philippines, and then made their way to just north of Phoenix.
Whoa.
And then they bounced from Phoenix to Richmond, California, lived there till my wife was 12. And like then my father-in-law was all like, this Richmond, California is not the place where I want to raise a family. And they moved to West Valley, Utah. And so when I met my wife, she was just finishing her master's degree here at the university. And she was out there presenting her thesis on the Big Island. And she happened to walk into the bar that I was at. And we said hello and came out here and visited a couple months later. And when she visited me in Hawaii, it's like, I think you're awesome and beautiful and I really like you, but you got to move to Hawaii or there's no sense in us keeping this on. And she's like, my contract with the university ends in June. I can come out in July. So.
And now the whole family's down there.
Yeah. Now my mother and father-in-law are living with us. You know, we got 2 kids and life
then you
is
hear
good.
her family story and you're like, yeah, let's do this. Oh, this is wild. Like pairing your bloodlines, like the crazy backgrounds, and you just smash those into your kids. That's wild.
It's like my son and daughter, they're pretty rad.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. And then, yeah, like they have the upbringing of like that mindset of my father-in-law. It's just insane. And then go throw them in.
Dude,
like,
I can't wait for this future when you get to like explain this to your kids over the campfire. I got to be there. You got to save some of these stories for when I can be around.
Go
like,
out there and be like,
when your son's like 15 years old, he's like, what? Excuse me, what?
so my son's name is Pa'akai. And so Pa'a is solid and Kai is ocean. So he's the solid form of ocean or salt. And so for the Hawaiian people, Pa'akai, like the importance of it could never be overstated because that's how you preserve the past and bring it into the future. You know, if you caught a lot of fish today, if you want to eat it tomorrow in the next few days without going spoiled, you had to put Pa'akai on it. You had to salt it. And so like I took that kind of, meaning and been like, his job is to preserve our way of life. You know, the fisherman, the hunter, the outdoorsman, my father-in-law's lineage, the Laotian, badass, Chuck Norris essence, and bring that whole story and bring it into the future, like I remember diving and coming out of the water and just kind of driving home, and I had, it was all salty, covered in Pa'akai essentially. And I was like thinking about names, and I was all like, freaking Pa'akai. Frick, yeah. And then, I had like a 3-hour drive home just thinking in my own set, and I was all like, that's what my son's name is going to be. It's like, it's got to be Pa'akai. And so his name is Pa'akai, Wade after my father, Ragnar, because I got some Norwegian blood in me, so I had to put some Viking love in there. And then Lee, obviously. But so like that's his responsibility, is basically to take the stories, from me, my grandfather, my dad, or his grandfather, my dad, and then Sonley's dad, and to hear those stories and kind of, carve his way through this world and just be like, hey, this is who I represent. This is what I represent, and kind of push forward.
Cool, man. Thanks for sharing that stuff, and thanks for exposing me to your guys' culture over the years, and I can't wait to do more of it. And
you got to get back out there, man.
Dude, when we took Jonathan hunting for goats, man, and
Bro, that was so much
you're
fun.
carrying John through some gnarly terrain, like down just steep cliffs, and John smoked that goat. Like, what? You had like what was that? 45-70 lever action that he smoked.
30 lever action. It was Wayne's gun.
Yeah.
Covered in electrical tape holding down the rear sight.
It was so great. Yeah. It means the world to me to go and do that stuff and experience why.
It was a blast, man. And yeah, you got to come back out there and you got to bring the little one with you.
Yeah. He's got to experience that for the first time.
He's free to travel right now until he turns 2. So
yeah,
you gotta
I know. We gotta
there.
get it done soon. All right, man. Well, thank you.
Sweet. Thank you very, very much, dude. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Black rifle copy, baby. Pretty cool.